So this is all me just kind of brainstorming at this stage. And then this is about October last year. And then serendipitously, I had this call from this geezer called Deepak. And he started talking to me about benchmarking and some other things. And I sort of thought, oh, well, I don't know about this. I ain't got any money. But I'll humour him. I'll have a coffee with him. And so I did. And we sort of were talking about the value of benchmarking. And it kind of struck me that actually, because I am so, intuitive and unstructured, sometimes I do need structure. And actually, I also realised that not everyone thinks that my ideas are good either. So, to have an evidence base for some of my ideas is going to be a good thing. So, what we ended up doing was a benchmarking exercise with Deepak, which turned out to be of far more value than what I had ever really anticipated. So, going through a range of questions about various aspects of a contact centre, right from strategy through to technology, through to health and safety, the whole kit and caboodle. And then that gave us a sense of kind of where we are. And unsurprisingly, far more red than green, but that's okay, at least we know. But it was the more intangible stuff that was so valuable for me, and in particularly my leadership team. So I love my leadership team. They're open, they're willing, they're brave, but they're not what I would call experienced. And all of them virtually have grown up in Oranga Tamariki, because that's what Oranga Tamariki does. And so we put people in leadership positions who are great in the context of social work, but who don't have what I would call business acumen and some of those strong management disciplines. And so doing this was a fantastic way to kind of get them to start think about our operation differently. So, so we don't know what we don't know. And so, having this benchmarking exercise ask us different questions about our strategy and technology, you could see their eyes spinning in the back of their head and say, I don't even know what they're asking. But actually, in a disciplined operation, you need to know this stuff. You need to have this stuff in place. So it was a real eye-opener for even for myself, but also my leadership team. We have no idea what good looks like, so we don't know. We might be thinking we're doing, bloody fantastic. But actually, compared to other organisations, compared to other contact centres around the world, maybe we're not. Importantly for me, rather than my business plan being driven by my intuition, it actually added a level of robustness to that, because we could actually link it back to the benchmarking exercise to say, these are the areas that we really need. We've got big gaps here. Even though this is the sexy stuff up here, we've got some fundamental gaps that we need to fill. So it really allowed, I think, a more fully rounded business plan rather than just my 3 a.m. ideas. It really allowed us to identify the priorities as well and the sequencing of what we do. My favourite one, though, was it gives me an evidence base for investment. So I'm talking automation, automation, automation. Automation don't come free. So I've got to convince our finance people to cough up some do-re-mi. Having me just rock up and say, hey, this is a great idea, ain't going to cut it. But at least if I've got some sort of a benchmarking evidence base to help back that up, it makes a slightly more compelling case for me to get funding and investment into doing some cool things which I think are going to drive significant benefits for the organisation, both financially and non-financial. And the last thing there, as I said, for our leadership team, and this was a reflection. We had a debrief afterwards, and we sort of talked about how this benchmarking process was for us. And they said it was great, again, because I don't know what I don't know. And now all of a sudden I'm thinking far more holistically about our operation, what its needs are, what it means to be a safe, well-oiled machine. So it really helped to develop the business acumen, the business skills for my leadership team. So it really proved to be a well worth exercise for us. One of the big things, one of the first things that came out, just even as the discussion, was, does the contact centre strategy link to your organisational strategy? And of course, all my leadership team went, oh, no. I'm sitting there going, well, yeah, I think it does. But my mistake was never actually having drawn it, demonstrated it, shown it. And so, this isn't a flash slide, right, by the way. But, we've got our organisational strategy on the left. I had our 5 Ps, which is our strategy, on the right-hand side, and our, what I call just our 5 pillars around practice, social work practice, people, process, platform, and partners. And I could actually demonstrate how they contribute to the organisational strategic shifts that Oranga Tamariki is trying to make. So again, all of a sudden now, people start to understand, these change avoidant people start to understand, it creates a bit of narrative for them about why we're changing. What is the point? It's not just some crazy guy wanting to put some dreams into place. Or maybe it is. So those are our 5 Ps. Being able to link it to strategy, people have got that line of sight all the way through. And then that obviously then trickles down into a business plan. And I'm not going to go through that, but again, you can see on the left-hand side our 5 Ps, what the objective is, all the activities and the time frame. All of this is driven off the benchmarking exercise. Now, you can do this without benchmarking, but actually it kind of becomes a bit like sort of, blind man's buff, really. You're just kind of making up stuff. Having that sort of discussion about benchmarking and where we're at was really useful for developing our own strategy, our own business plan, which we can then, I can go to my boss now and say, this is what I'm doing this year. And the thing that I love about my job is the autonomy that I've got. But I can go to her and I can say, this is what we're doing, this is why we're doing it, and this is how it links to the organisational strategy. So when you're sitting at the executive leadership table, I want you to champion our cause because you can say that we are directly contributing to what the executive leadership team has said is most important. So that line of sight for us now is all really, really important. And then throughout this process, it kind of got me thinking about, and especially I think in the current context where, government is wanting us to save a whole lot of money in the public sector, and you've got public servants all over the shop running around, henny penny, the sky's falling in, how are we going to save this money? If we can have, if we can get organisations, public sector organisations to be working much more closely together, I think there's a lot for us, whether it's through benchmarking or not. There's a lot for us to gain in terms of those shared learning experiences. I'm going back to my old digs, Inland Revenue, next week, just to understand what they do in terms of automation at the moment. I've kind of got something in my head, and I remember what we did way back in 2013, but the world's changed a lot since then. But I've gone back to one of my old contacts there, and he's going to spend a couple of hours with me showing what they do and how they do it. So lots for us to learn, I think, from these types of conversations, but also from visiting other organisations. And I don't know why we're so shy about doing it. I keep saying to my guys, get out of the office, get out of the 4 walls, go and visit other contact centres. And it's just, they're just comfortable just sitting there doing this, Drives me nuts. Collective problem solving. If we've got a problem, you can bet your bottom dollar we're not the only ones in the country who've got that problem. So how do we actually go and find out how do other people solve those problems? How do we, if we've got the same problem that we haven't solved, how do we solve it together? And in the context of fiscal constraint, how do government agencies start to work more closely together, using investment wisely to get better bang for our buck? And this isn't a new concept, right? I remember when Bill English was Minister of Finance, I think it was before he even became Prime Minister. when he was wet behind the ears, and he was talking about doing more with less and joined up government and all these, all those sort of mantras. It's the same thing, right? How do we actually get closer together as a public service or as public service agencies to get better bang for public dollar, rather than everyone kind of doing their own thing in their own silo, which always happens. So I think there's a real opportunity here for that joint investment, particularly things around automation and AI and those sorts of things that are coming in. And then that obviously leads to shared costs, maybe some economies of scale, and we can do some cool things at a slightly cheaper price. And it's a win-win, right? The government gets their 6.5% cut. We get our flash new toys that we want to do. Taxpayers win. The public wins. See, it's so easy at 3 a.m. Everything looks good on a whiteboard, right? Well, my favourite saying is, Mike Tyson's quote, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face. So someone will come along and punch me in the face and go, oh, yeah, that wasn't a good idea, was it? But, so yeah. So there's my thoughts anyway. That's kind of been our journey. And it's been a very, very reflective last few months since meeting old mate Deepak here. It's been very useful for me. And I think it's given us, a lot more structure to what we do, and more importantly, the ability to actually talk to the organisation about the value of the contact centre, the value of investing in the contact centre, not as a lone entity, but as part of the organisational good. Thank you, good night. Any questions?